Here in Florida, lawmakers plan to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in the upcoming special session, sanctioning Iran, supporting Israel's war against Hamas militants, and more. Capitol reporter Forrest Saunders with details on the special session running from tomorrow, November 6th, through November 9th.
The legislation has landed. Ahead of Monday's special session start, 5 bills with versions in both chambers. Front and center supporting Israel's war with Hamas. A resolution under consideration would back the Jewish state's right to exist and defend itself against terrorism.
We're going to support the state of Israel, which is the only democracy in the Middle East.
State Senator Lori Berman is carrying a version of the bill. While it's largely symbolic, she believes it says a lot.
Given the situation in the world right now, we all need to recognize that words matter.
There's also the governor's plan to sanction Iran. The policy would drastically restrict local governments from contracting with the foreign nation. It also seeks to cut state investments in companies tied to Iranian industry.
In speaking directly with state regulators, we do have companies that are under concern that we do feel like could meet this new threshold.
State Rep John Snyder didn't offer specifics, but said officials had identified multiple companies in Florida's portfolio that could get booted under the policy.
We do not want to release any names prematurely because we know that that could have serious consequences. But what will happen is that in January, any company that is found to meet this new threshold will be made public. They'll have 90 days to either correct their action or, again, all Florida funds will be divested from their portfolios.
The rest of the bills are largely centered on funding various programs. One moves around $350 million in previously allocated funds to boost the state's new universal school voucher program. Another seeks $35 million to help upgrade security at Jewish temples, day schools, and other nonprofits at risk of hate crime. Disaster relief gets the biggest chunk, more than $400 million slated to not only help with Hurricane Idalia recovery, but refill Florida's grant program hardening homes against severe weather. It's something officials say could reduce insurance premiums for those who participate.
I think that home hardening is one of the best things that any consumer can do. Will also help to make it a more attractive underwriting position for the state of Florida.
The next step is for lawmakers to review all of this and decide whether they'll support it when the gavel drops next week. At the Capitol, Forrest Saunders, WPTV News Channel 5.
Busy week ahead. News Channel 5 political analyst Brian Crowley here. Thoughts on the special session first?
Largely a waste of time. It's mostly a political stunt for Governor DeSantis, who wants to make a big show of we're going to take on Iran. Of course, to me, the fascinating thing is, can he point to the amount of state dollars that we've been spending during his 5 years in office to help out Iran? I don't believe that exists. So, you know, the legislature should be spending its time concentrating exclusively on the issues that directly affect Floridians, and Iran is not one of them. Like home insurance, absolutely, auto insurance.
Affordable housing, we just talked
Affordable
about.
housing. Mm-hmm. You know, those are the kinds of things we need to be concentrating on instead of trying to help, you know, Governor DeSantis get a soundbite on something that has zero impact on Florida voters.
Talk about next week. We've got the debate. You and I will be there, the GOP debate in Miami. 5 on stage, including Governor Ron DeSantis. The former president will not, again, be on stage. He'll be across town in Hialeah in Miami-Dade County with his own event. The dynamics there, oh so interesting.
Well, you know, Donald Trump said, by golly, he's not going to attend any debates. And on this third debate, he's not going, and he's not. If there's a fourth one or a fifth one, he's not going to show up for those either. And I know you're going to be shocked that I use this word, but polling is convincing Donald Trump that he doesn't need to. He's way ahead in the polls. And in fact, Governor DeSantis has declined in the polls, and Nikki Haley has gained in the polls. And this debate really is going to be about Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. They're the two that have the best chance at this moment of securing a number 2 spot strongly enough where they can at least take a shot at trying to take on Donald Trump. And, you know, in the last month or so, Ron DeSantis has been in decline and Nikki Haley has been increasing.
Some argue her foreign policy strengths and what's going on with Israel and Hamas play into that.
But also, I think you know, what Ron DeSantis, and I've said this last week, I believe, you know, what Ron DeSantis needs to do is take off the cowboy boots, put a smile on his face, give shorter answers, and be personable on the stage. He acts like an angry college professor half the time.
Aside from the important optics, what if you were sitting there, and I know journalism, first draft of history every day, but if you were saying kind of systemically at the core of his campaign where he wrong-footed perhaps at the start, and some would argue no matter what he did, you weren't going to beat Donald Trump, but what would your early thought be?
I think he has weak advisors around him. I think that but I think the reason he has weak advisors around him is he tends to do what he wants to do, and he wants people to say yes. I think he doesn't understand that his nearly historic victory in his reelection, 19%.
In Florida.
In Florida, I think, you know, I've always said, don't just look at the winner, look at the loser. And how bad was the campaign they ran, and
Speaking
what did voters
Crist,
really think of them? And Charlie Crist, my mother could have defeated Charlie Crist. So I think he may have overread what he got from winning Democrats and independents in that vote. I think he needed a tougher campaign to help him with his presidential campaign.
A little less on culture issues, a little more on bread and butter issues. Would that have helped at all?
I think he needs to talk more about the economy. I think he needs to walk away from a lot of the woke stuff. He's already established his credentials on that. And, he just needs to relate to the voters in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Nevada. That's where it really counts.
Fat lady hasn't, she's not singing yet, but she's warming up. Many argue, some say she has, and that we're just perpetuating a narrative that's not going to happen. Trump's going to be the nominee, barring Haley's comet coming in here or something that we can't possibly imagine.
You know, I'm of the view that a lot of voters are still, Republican voters are still sitting on the sidelines. I think that if you ask them, they'll say, yes, I support Trump. But I think as these court hearings start gaining momentum, I think if Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley start making some inroads, that some of those voters might finally see the opportunity to move to somebody else.
I want to ask you about the court cases next year, but very quickly, Rick Scott decides to endorse, which was no surprise, former President Trump. Just speak to that for those who don't follow politics.
Well, when Ron DeSantis first won office and Rick Scott was a sitting governor, Rick Scott all but elbowed him out of the way. He didn't allow for a transition.
Yeah, a lot of bad blood.
He left in the middle of his DeSantis's inauguration.
I remember that. I was up there.
And it was, they don't really like each other, so this wasn't a big surprise.
Talk about next year and the dynamic. I mean, we're into November now, the election season almost upon us. It will truly be an historic year. You have the election coming up, a former president running again, facing huge trials, indictments in the Mar-a-Lago case and much more, trial dates that are being tussled back and forth. Do we keep it here? Do we push it past the election? All of that dynamic, Brian, for the best of political writers, and you're one of them. It's a story we just can't know how it's going to begin or end next year.
Yeah, we've never had a political cycle like this before. This is historic, and 50 years from now, historians will be writing volumes about all of this. And I don't think Ron DeSantis is wrong in thinking that at some point over the next 12 months, voters may tire of Donald Trump and all of the drama. I'm talking about in the Republican Party. But they're not there yet, and it's going to be an incredible election year. And but even if you take all of that out of there, are the policies of Donald Trump something that people want to move forward? Are the policies of Joe Biden something that want to continue? As much as we talk about Donald Trump, a lot of the Democrats I talk to are very lukewarm about Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not doing well in the polls, even within his own party. And a lot of people are concerned about his age.
Brian, we'll have to wrap this portion of our broadcast, but we'll, as always, have your closing comments in just a moment.